Welcome back to Capitol Review. University of Maryland Baltimore County released a Battleground exit poll. That poll is showing how Marylanders, specifically Baltimore County voters, feel about the results of the 2024 election. 60% cast their ballot for Vice President Kamala Harris, but the race for Maryland U.S. Senate, that was split among voters. Returning to Capitol Review is Dr. Mileah Kromer. She is the director of UMBC's Institute of Politics. Now, Dr. Kromer, a little over 2 weeks ago after the election, we're learning more about Baltimore voter attitude on several topics, from presidential and U.S. Senate races to question one on Maryland's ballot. So let's get right into it. That poll showed several things, but one of the things I wanted to address first, let's talk about who these voters were and how they voted the way they did. Over 1,100 students, over 1,100 people took part in this poll. So many people, a higher percentage of people showed that they were moderates, but 60% voted the Harris-Walz ticket. Explain, what do you think the appeal was for moderates in this presidential race?
Right, so the UMBC exit poll was conducted among Baltimore County voters during early voting period, and then on election day. We had a fantastic team of 60 students out there all day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. asking Baltimore County voters what they thought. And, you know, just to put a finer point on it, Baltimore County is really important in these election cycles. It's a bellwether county. And if you can win Baltimore County, you can typically win statewide. And so you bring up the issue of moderates and, you know, the how they broke for Harris and Walz, as well as also Brooks during this election cycle. The state primarily has Maryland has a plurality of moderate voters. So what we found here in our poll is not uncommon to what we have seen for years and years of polling. It's always, I think, people want to paint Maryland as a blue state and then sort of walk away. But it really is, it's a blue state in terms of party identification. But we have a healthy mix of a plurality of moderates and then a mix of progressives and conservatives. And so what you really see here, I think, in the results of our exit poll, as well as just the results of the election in general, is that, you know, there's a lot of Democrats in the state, and a lot of Democrats identify as moderates. And when it comes to voting in elections, people typically vote with their party identification.
And, you know, you had mentioned also, Brooks, in the race against Larry Hogan, who is a beloved governor while he was here, it was pretty tight. Do you think that that moderate Democrat gave her that edge to win in with the people you surveyed?
So that's absolutely right. And I think that it's not just among the Baltimore County voters that are represented here in our exit poll, but if you look at the statewide returns, it was really clear from early on, and some of our pre-election polling showed this, that Larry Hogan needed to put together that Hogan coalition one more time, which meant he needed to get about a third or at least 25% of Democrats to vote for him this go around. The exit poll suggests here, at least in Baltimore County, which is again a pretty good bellwether for the state, that he was just unable to win back Democratic votes like he was able to do in 2014 and 2018. And a lot of that is certainly not even him as an individual. You know, he remained popular up until election day, had a strong, still pretty solid favorability ratings. But it was the idea of control of the Senate that really a lot of Democrats just could not vote for Hogan, even if they liked him, because they were very concerned about control of the Senate. And I think that shakes out. It's what we've seen, certainly the Battleground exit poll numbers here, and what we saw in a lot of pre-election polling as well.
And, you know, that poll showed several different things. Another thing that I thought was interesting, it showed more people thought the U.S. economy and Maryland's economy was worse or much worse. And with Donald Trump's message of making the economy better, do you think that didn't really resonate with people, the voters in Baltimore County?
Well, you know, so again, keeping in mind that Baltimore County, as well as the rest of the state, is a Democratic majority. And so those appeals to folks on economic issues can only go so far. They can't, especially when you're talking about, you know, a ton of Democrats that live here in the state and in Baltimore County. But what, you know, it is important to note that if you look at the vote returns from 2020, when former President Trump was going against Joe Biden in this election cycle, that the former president has made gains here in the state. He's done about certainly a couple points better than he did in 2020, and that might be partially due to sort of people's negative economic views.
And that's something a lot of people have been saying as we're getting the feelings and the results following this election. Dr. Kromer, thank you for joining us here on Capitol Review.
Thanks for having me.